Some days I wish that I had billions of dollars because do you know what I would do? I would create a Mount Rushmore of fuckery and put this entire administration on it. Starting, of course, with chiseling Donald Trump's fake toupee, his fake tan, and his stupid little hands on it. Because every time that I'm looking at headlines swing back and forth about Donald Trump says that the war in Iran is winding down, but yet 3,000 troops are on their way there. Oh, Donald Trump says that, oh, we have negotiations with Iran, and then the market swings up and a certain group of people make about $1.5 billion. We all know it's a scheme. We all know it's a lie. We all know it's a grift. We all know that they're going to steal the 2026 midterms. And yet, everyone that has even a little monicum of power to do anything about it, like that thing called what? Congress? No one does a fucking thing. And so here we are. The country's in the shitter. Oh, and by the way, we're insolvent. That's right. Donald Trump, much like he's done with past casinos, has bankrupted the United States, but is still asking for $200 billion. So I guess that Pete Hegseth can conduct a military meeting from a yacht. Folks, it's Tuesday, and I've had enough. Welcome to the Danielle Moody Show. Let's get into it. Hello, damnation. I am so glad that you are all here on this Tuesday. We begin today with this, the pictures that are coming out of the airports where ICE has been deployed to. This is a picture of a ICE agent who is leaning against a pole while there are hundreds of people below outside in line to get through security, to go through TSA. So what exactly is this man that is being paid an exorbitant amount of money being paid to do exactly? Check his Instagram, maybe Truth Social. This man is getting paid while TSA, who is now dealing with hours-long lines, right? Angry customers, angry travelers, gets nothing. How does this make sense to anyone? And of course it doesn't, right? But it doesn't need to make sense. And I want folks to understand, like when you keep saying things like, well, wait until midterms, the reasons why these actions are being taken right now from Republicans without a care in the world is because they know that midterms is in the bag. Not because they believe that their base is going to show up for them, but because they know that Donald Trump, in conjunction with the SAVE Act, the massive gerrymandering, the fuckery with the U.S. Postal Service, Supreme Court getting ready to decide against mail-in ballots, even though Donald Trump himself just casted a mail-in ballot for a local election in Florida, that all of these things spelled together, guess what? Your vote isn't going to matter. So seeing images like this circulate around on social media, folks, they don't care. And I think that that should be the scariest thing to us, is that in any other time, Republicans would be working to actually try and get a deal with Democrats. But we know, as we heard earlier this week on Monday, yesterday, Senate Republicans went to Donald Trump with a bipartisan deal that said, look, they'll agree to fund everything except for ICE. We'll do that in a separate bill. It'll be a win. Travel can go back to normal. And Donald Trump said, no, I don't want that. And so, yeah, we remain here. And here is a traveler, right? Reporter asks, well, you're standing in line for hours. Who do you blame for what is happening right now?
What do you make of this ongoing chaos at the airports?
Listen, I think it's terrible. I think it's, well, I don't want to get political too much here, but I think they should solve this. And what I'm hearing is that there are some proposals on the table to get TSA, do funding for the TSA. Just flew in here and saw a bunch of ICE people down at the baggage claims. Not sure what they're doing at the baggage claims. I don't know if TSA, I don't know why they would be people getting their baggage.
Who do you blame for all this?
Trump. Yeah, I really do. I mean, I've seen what's going on in Minneapolis, and I'm very opposed to some of the tactics of ICE. So I stand with the Democrats on this one.
What about the fact that they're walking around without masks on? Does that help?
No, not at all. And I'm watching downstairs. We all came in. You saw people bracing themselves, like, what the hell's going on here? And there were a lot of people who were taking pictures and sort of watching them. They were just milling around. They weren't even doing anything. I don't know, just sort of chatting. I don't know what their function was.
I don't know what their function was, right? But we know what ICE's function is. ICE is being trained, or poorly trained at that, in order to do what? To be out in the streets, kicking in doors, breaking people's windows, terrorizing families, breaking up families, throwing innocent people into hellhole concentration camps, taking bets on whether or not they will kill themselves, or actually just, beating them to death. That's what ICE is trained to do. So when you put them out in the open without their masks, and you say that they're there to help with efficiency, what is the efficiency there? She asked a very good question. Why are they down in baggage claim? Are they helping people with their bags? What are they there to do? Are they helping the lines move faster? No, because you actually need trained TSA agents there in mass to do their job. So I've seen pictures of ICE agents standing over the TSA agent who is scanning your ID, who is looking at your boarding pass. The TSA agent that's leaning against the wall looking over the shoulder of the TSA agent is the one that's getting paid. And yet Republicans didn't want to come to the table with Democrats because they want more funding for ICE. And the question is, funding to do what? Funding so that they can be on social media, so that they can go to fucking Starbucks on a stipend? You know who doesn't get a stipend for food? TSA agents. Do you know who can't afford their mortgage and their groceries? Rent right now? TSA agents. It is so laughable to me that years ago, decades ago at this point, that Republicans used to be ever seen as the fiscally responsible party, the economically responsible party. How? Because when you look at the administrations of the last 3 Republicans that were in office, let me tell you what the pattern is. War in the Middle East, fucking recession. That's all they know how to do. They got money for war, and as Tupac said, can't feed the poor, except it's not a can't feed the poor, it's a won't feed the poor. It's a won't use your tax dollars to actually do anything for the people of this country. It's a, oh, I'm going to take students who graduated from college that Joe Biden tried to give student loan debt relief to. I'm going to take you to the Supreme Court and ensure that you live a life shackled to debt. And the same relief that Joe Biden wanted to give those that pursued higher education, ICE agents got those bonuses. ICE agents are getting the 7-figure salaries to brutalize this country. But again, for whatever reason, every election year, every presidential election year, every midterm election, it's always, oh, well, the economy is doing bad, so we must put a Republican in charge. And it's like, are Americans, like, truly, I say, they have the memory of a gnat. Because every time a Republican is in charge of this country, it goes to shit. Then a Democrat comes in like a janitor, cleans up everything, and then the American people are like, oh, but we need now to have another Republican in because things are what? Too good? So when that woman said, I'm not trying to get political here, if you're not trying to get political, you are not awake. You are not conscious, because there is not a fucking aspect of our lives right now that is not touched by politics. And if folks understood that 10 years ago, then Donald Trump would have never become president. He would have remained the reality TV clown that he is. And we wouldn't be living inside of his fucking circus if people recognized just how important politics was and how you should want to get political. Because when it comes to your roads, when it comes to your children's public education, when it comes to your healthcare, when it comes to your retirement, there isn't an aspect of your life, including your food and your medicine, your vaccines, that isn't touched by politics. So not getting political is not you being above any goddamn thing. It's the reason why we got here in the first fucking place. And so, of course, here we are now, after 8 attempts by Democrats to pass separate funding for TSA, for FEMA, and other parts of DHS. Here come the Republicans. Senate Republicans believe they have a solution to break the logjam and reopen DHS. Oh, interesting. Let's see what that solution is, shall we? 2-step plan, according to NBC News. 1, fund all DHS except ICE deportations to win Dems and get to 60. Who had that idea? 8 times? Including over the weekend, that was voted down by Republicans? Democrats. Do you know what the headline of CNN was today? Republicans offer a deal to fund DHS. I'm sorry, what? Or should it have read, Republicans finally wake up and realize that they need to actually work with Democrats who are trying to open the government? Here's part 2. This is the part that is going to be the sticking point. And of course, mainstream corporate media is going to run with it and say, well, the Republicans are trying to be, they're trying to compromise. The second part is fund ICE deportations in reconciliation plus elements of the SAVE Act to get a win for Trump. The SAVE Act that is going to disenfranchise 70 million women. The SAVE Act that is a redundant piece of legislation to try and stop, quote unquote, undocumented people from being able to vote, which between the last, 10 years or the last 20 years, there's been 77 cases of people fraudulently voting. 77, not 77,000, not 7,700, not 700, 77. They want to pass the SAVE Act because Donald Trump can't win the election anyway. They have all of these plans that are in place. And so this is where I appreciate. I don't know how Jessica Tarlov does her job, but I'm sure she is paid a handsome amount of money for it. But I want you to take a listen to her talking to the Republicans on the panel at Fox with regard to what it is that she sees that the Democrats have been trying to do and what Republicans refuse to do. Take a listen.
Wouldn't the Democrats just say, let's claim victory,
because it
fight another day, instead of doing this to the TSA agents and the traveling public?
The Senate Democrats have put forward 7 standalone bills to fund TSA, and there have been 10 bills that would have funded TSA, CISA, Coast Guard, and FEMA. There was a discharge petition in the House that the Democrats brought forward last week that the Republicans and saying that Donald Trump gave an offer. John Thune went to him this weekend and said, we have a deal on this. I want this. I saw Ted Cruz is enthusiastic about it. I know an airport open in case he has somewhere to go. But they were offering him, saying, we can get ICE funding done through reconciliation. We just need votes for that. We have the numbers. We can reopen the airports the way that you need them to be. We can fund FEMA, CISA, Coast Guard. Not going to get passed. John Thune says it's not going to get passed.
Abolishing ICE.
And it's not. Yeah, but that's not what Democrats are talking about right now. They're saying you want to fund it, just fund it. There are bills on the floor to be able to do that. Republicans are refusing to do it. And the SAVE America Act is not a voter ID bill. It is a citizenship bill. The American public knows that. If you said you can show any ID when you show up to vote, people would go for that. If you say that you need to register with your passport or your birth certificate, that is not going to happen. And I've said it before, it's going to disadvantage Republican voters than Democratic voters, and none of them are illegal, in case you were going there, Jesse.
In addition.
And that's the thing that they are actually trying to say, right? Like every time that you see a Republican on air, they're like, well, this is to really make our elections secure. But when you actually bring up the stats with regard to how many fraudulent people have actually voted, they just ignore it because they know that people will run with their talking points as opposed to just ask a little bit deeper to dig into the facts. And here's the thing, just in the same way that Trump said, find me new seats, do all the gerrymandering that you can do. And how did that work out for him? Because he wasn't expecting that when Texas said, okay, we'll gerrymander the hell out of our districts and other red states followed suit, he didn't think California was going to do the same thing. He didn't think New York was going to do the same thing. Because what they show is that they don't ever actually think. Because like I said, it is a government run by Neanderthals. They don't think. They don't have strategy. They think that brute force and popping off on fucking social media is what it looks like to govern. And at the end of the day, it isn't going to only be Democratic women voters who are hurt by the SAVE Act. It is going to be their own voters that are hurt by it. But only time will tell. Because again, it isn't just Republicans that are willing to vote for the SAVE Act. There are Democrats that are doing it just the same way that they voted to fund ICE. This is why I say, even though I personally believe that the last free and fair election happened in 2020, those are my thoughts. That is what I'm speculating with regard to. And I always tell you guys when I do, I believe that, again, 2024, what was Elon Musk doing in Pennsylvania? What was happening in these places where there were bomb threats and they had to be vacated and then put back in? There was a lot that was going on. And I also believe, much in the same way that Merrick Garland wanted to preserve institutions, so it took him 2 years to appoint a special counsel to investigate Donald Trump, I do believe that if in fact Kamala Harris and Democrats knew that there was actually some meddling, some issues that were happening in 2024, I actually don't think that they would have stood up and done anything about it. Because to them, the preservation of the idea of a free and fair vote and not bringing it into question would have been more important than if there actually had been fraud and investigating it, because they wouldn't want to put themselves in the same bucket that Donald Trump had put us all in 2020 and continues to say that the 2020 election was rigged, which we know that it wasn't. But you can't convince me without there being investigation that Kamala Harris really only lost by a percentage point. We're talking about a handful of votes in a handful of places. Those are my thoughts. So switching gears as we move on to this hellscape that we're in, where again, there was no evidence that Iran had nuclear weapons. Our own intelligence agencies said so. But we are in the 1 month mark of being at a illegal war with Iran in concert with Israel. Donald Trump has been getting on his broke down social media platform, and now he's doing tap dances in front of the media. Folks, saying that, give me 1 second, because it makes me sick. I needed a sip. Trump claims that Iran gave him a present, and I am not kidding. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. It was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. I'm not going to tell you what the present is, but it was a very significant prize, and they gave it to us. Raise your hand in the chat if you actually believe that Donald Trump is telling the truth. What are we doing here? What are you talking about? Like, if Donald Trump was in a senior home for dementia, this would make sense. We know that Iran has said, we're in no negotiations, we're in no conversation. So do we really think that after you have bombed over 400 of their schools, killed school children, bombed their hospitals, committed all sorts of war crimes, do we really think that Iran said, you know what? Let's send Trump a gift. I mean, I know that the Qataris tried to do that. It didn't work out well for them either. And so, again, here we go. Media running with the headline. Trump claims Iran has agreed they will never have a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump has claimed Iran agreed that they will never have nuclear weapons. Speaking to reporters while swearing in Mark Wayne Mullen as a new Homeland Security Secretary, he said Iran was talking to us and they're talking sense. He continued, it all starts with they can't have a nuclear weapon, adding, I don't want to say in advance, but they've agreed they will never have a nuclear weapon. They've agreed to that. Does everyone remember the video that I showed you yesterday? You know, the one where they're showing cartoons of Donald Trump sweating and claiming a whole bunch of lies, or like the cartoon of the Strait of Hormuz and the bombs that are happening, and then the tweet that they posted in saying that we don't even have a mediator. We're not talking to you at all. But again, this is what the media is reporting on. Donald Trump says something like, Donald Trump could say, you know what? Aliens landed on the South Lawn yesterday. And CNN and ABC and CBS would all run with the idea of, Donald Trump is speaking to aliens. How exciting. Because there's no deep questioning that is there. And I'm like, how long have we allowed this man to lie to us? For at least 10 years, if not longer. 10 years of him being a politician, but 70 some odd years of him being like a grifting, alleged adjudicated rapist, right? A celebrity magnet, a celebrity reality star. And yet anything that he says becomes a headline that used to be credible news outlets go up with. So, okay, so let's say this. Donald Trump says Iran, today, all of this happened today, by the way. Donald Trump says Iran gave him a present. Donald Trump says that Iran has agreed to no nuclear weapons. And yet, here's our friend of the show, Dino Badala, who says, just in, Trump orders 3,000 more troops to the Middle East as Pentagon considers land operations. For anyone thinking that Trump won't send troops to Iran because it's very unpopular, you don't get that Trump and GOP don't care about public opinion. They are planning on stealing the 2026 election. So make it make sense for me, folks, because it doesn't. Donald Trump in the pressers today is saying, Iran, they love me. They're sending me gifts, very expensive gifts. You know, I can't tell you what the gifts are, but they're so expensive and fancy, right? Like he sounds like a drunk Real Housewife with a little bit too much Chardonnay that is trying to hype up something that her husband did, who we know is actually cheating on her and doesn't really like her. Like that's the kind of stupid shit that Donald Trump just says out of his mouth. And the media, where are the follow-up questions? Really, Mr. President? Because yesterday, there were reports that were coming out, credible reports. As a matter of fact, Iran's foreign minister got on television and said that there are no mediations that are happening. There is no conversations that have been happening whatsoever. Ever since you know that in the middle of the actual negotiations that happened before you started bombing them along with Israel, that they had put a really big deal on the table during the peace talks in Geneva. Can you speak to that? Where are those reporters? Do they exist anymore? I'm just curious. But so here is another headline for you. Iran says US and Israel attacked Bushehr nuclear power plant site. Remember what Iran said, that if you attack our energy infrastructure, that we are coming for you and all of your energy infrastructure in the Middle East and in Asia? The incident, which took place on Tuesday night, caused no financial or technical damage and no casualties, and no part of the facility was affected, it said. But here is this. What we know is that we're at a place where I think most of us believe Iran more than we believe the United States. That we're believing whatever is being said with regard to how this war is actually unfolding. Because every time that Donald Trump says something, it's just suspect. He also said today that the United States is running the streets of Tehran. Really? Because allegedly we don't have any boots on the ground. They're still on ships getting ready to head over there. It doesn't make any sense. And it's like the more that the public turns on this war, the more that Donald Trump notches up the lies. And that is where I say that the more that this regime is backed into a corner, the more dangerous they will become. It isn't to say that they're going to capitulate, no, because these are people that are just irresponsible, irrational, and only move through brute force. They're never going to admit that they were wrong. They're never going to admit defeat. So Donald Trump has to concoct stories, whether it be with regard to presence, whether it be with regard to him being the best negotiator and them saying they'll never have a nuclear weapon, which, by the way, our own intelligence agency said if the goal of attacking Iran is to stop the nuclear weapons, then they don't have any and they're not planning to build any. Also, just mind you that last year, with the 12-day operation, Donald Trump said he obliterated all of their nuclear capabilities. So which is it? Which is it? Because trying to follow his lies are so fucking exhausting. But here is something that I actually do believe that he said today. Trump just said that Pete Hegseth was angry that there may be a settlement in the Iran war. He said that Hegseth doesn't want it to be settled. I don't want to say this, but I have to. Pete didn't want it to be settled. In other words, our quote unquote Secretary of War doesn't want peace. He wants war. And Donald Trump just told us what we've always known. But let's talk about the cost of this war, and not just the cost of $1 billion a day or the cost of the $200 billion extra dollars that Donald Trump wants sent over to Pete Hegseth so that I'm assuming he can order a military ship worth of lobster and some more grand pianos. But take a listen to the actual cost that Americans are going to feel for a very long time.
Be real shortage. Again, we're talking the biggest supply disruption the world's ever seen. I'm going to even quote Fatih Birol, who said, he's the head of the IEA, who said this is the biggest disruption of both 73 and 79 combined. So he himself says this thing's really big. You can't expect that this is not going to have a physical impact. The physical market is really going to bite sometime in the next couple of weeks. I mean, the reason why China is protected right now, they've been hoarding for years, built up a huge stockpile in anticipation for an event like this. And that's what the SPR was created for, but we drew it down in 2022. And so when we look at consumers, I mean, you go back to the 70s, people were building fuel tanks in their backyards to be able to supply their automobiles. So this hoarding dynamic, it's underway.
This hoarding dynamic is underway, or preparation. Because you see, what we are learning and what the world is learning is that the United States is not reliable. Not only is it not reliable, but it is a liability. It is actually dangerous. And so once Donald Trump was reelected, because Americans either were hoodwinked and bamboozled, or the 77 million that really did vote for Donald Trump, believed that somehow he was going to usher in a new era. The rest of the world was just like, oh, well, we're going to need to learn how to operate without the United States. And also, you've put this erratic, illiterate toddler in charge. And so, yeah, we have to take precaution. And that is what China did. Because look at where we are right now. And this is according to Fortune. The Treasury, the Treasury of the United States, just declared the US insolvent, and the media missed it. The US government is insolvent. That's not hyperbole. It's the conclusion drawn directly from the Treasury Department's own consolidated financial statements for fiscal year 2025, released last week to near total media silence. The numbers: 6 trillion in total assets against 47 trillion in total liabilities as of September 30th. Folks, I never did well with math, right? It's not my strong suit. But if you only have this much in assets, like this, and this much in debt, does that make for a healthy balance sheet? I don't think so. Does that make it seem as if others should really be buying up your bonds because the dollar is secure and you're a sure bet? I don't think so. No, it's not. And it gets worse, because remember that yesterday when I was talking about the patterns of Donald Trump's actions, on where at the close of the market on Friday, he declares war or says some hot shit. And then on Monday, he quote unquote pulls a taco and backs out of it. But if you have investments and if you also have intel about the switch up that he's going to do, that you can do this little thing called short sales and make a considerable amount of money. So just 5 minutes before Trump's announcement to halt the attacks on Iran, massive trades reportedly hit the market. In one move, 1.5 billion in S&P 500 futures was bought, while 192 million in oil futures was sold. 5 minutes before Donald Trump made the announcement. And what is that called? There's a word for it. There's a phrase for it. Ah, yes, insider trading. Much like with the Epstein cohort, they're all in the scheme together. Follow the money. And there's a reason why they continue to refuse to follow the money, because they're all fucking in on it. It is stock manipulation. It is short trading. It is once again building the wealth of the Epstein cohort. And because who runs the stock exchange? Who runs the outlets that are supposed to be looking out and ensuring that insider trading isn't happening? Folks, the theft, the grift, it's exhausting. Because you and I will continue to struggle. There will be no middle class. I don't even know if there is a middle class right now. But certainly when this regime has it all said and done, we will have been squeezed for every last fucking dime while these people are living their Elysium futures. The rest of us will be on a rotting planet, breathing in the toxins of this war, by the way, which is a total chemical climate change fucking disaster on top of a humanitarian disaster. The amount of toxins that are going into the air, by the way, don't just stay and hover over Iran. They go around the fucking globe. But what do they care? Because the men that are causing these issues, they were in their late 70s. They were in their 80s. So they're not even going to have to deal with the effects of the damage that they're causing. And then their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, they'll be living on fucking Mars or in, souped up bunkers that they inherited. And the entire pattern and the clocks will run again. Before we all feel the need to jump off of a cliff, there's a little bit of good news today, and I had to intersperse it in between the bad news, the shit sandwich of America, if you will. But here is this. Minnesota sues Trump administration over evidence related to shootings, including deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. The lawsuit said the federal government is not permitted to withhold investigative evidence for the purpose of shielding law enforcement officers from scrutiny where a state is investigating serious potential violations of its criminal laws targeting its citizens within its borders. Variety said Tuesday that the federal government, quote, has adopted a policy of categorically withholding evidence, calling the practice unprecedented and alarming. She said the lawsuit followed formal demands for evidence after the federal government blocked Minnesota investigators from accessing evidence related to the shootings. They go on to say this, that the lawsuit claims that the federal government reneged on its promise to cooperate with the state investigations after the surge of federal law. Enforcements in Minneapolis and are seeking a court order demanding that the Trump administration comply. Variety said, who is the attorney in Hennepin County, we are prepared to fight for transparency and accountability that the federal government is desperate to avoid. And so, look, I don't know how this case will find itself weaving through our judiciary, but I do know that we need to keep an account and records of all the crimes that this regime is committing every single day, every single hour of every single day against the American people. Because at some point, inshallah, my friends, we may not see it, but maybe our kids and grandkids will see it. Someday there will be accountability. Someday there will be justice. Someday there will be a new America. And in that new America, with the evidence of this time frame, I am hoping that they learn the lessons that we did not learn. That if you don't hold criminals accountable, the crimes escalate. And so create a society and create systems that are people-centered, that are value-centered, and don't end up in a hierarchy that makes those that are wealthy, white, and male above the law. So thank you to Minnesota for bringing this lawsuit, for showing what this government did and continues to do inside of that state. And so then we go here. Look, like I said, this timeline, I wish we weren't fucking on, because it is the biggest fuck around and find outs of the century. And here's the thing, slowly but surely, even Trump's ridiculous, deplorable base is waking up, not because of genocide, not because of civil rights being rolled back, not because of the brutality of ICE, but because their own pockets are being hurt. And so I will let our friend Harry Enton talk to us about the latest polls and where the Republican Party finds itself with its base of men.
Donald Trump and Republicans won in 2024 because of support from male voters. The only way they can win, given the gender gap in this country, is support from male voters. And male voters are abandoning Donald Trump. Take a look here. This gives the game away. Okay, Trump's standing with men. In November of 2024, he beat Kamala Harris among them by 13 points. Look at where he is now on his net approval rating. Down he goes. It's a 20-point shift away from Donald Trump. He is now 7 points underwater at this particular point among men. I think it is very difficult for Republicans to do well in this midterm cycle if Donald Trump is underwater with men. As my uncle once wrote, where the boys are, where the men are, they are underwater when it comes to Donald Trump.
Okay, so that's overall men, but what about young men who were really influential?
Yes, young men. Of course, there was a massive shift to Donald Trump from 2020 to 2024 among young men. And look right here. Whoa! Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Men under the age of 25 on Trump. He won him in 2024 by 5 points. Look where he is now. The net approval rating way down there. Down we go to negative 19 points. That's nearly a 25-point switcheroo against the president of the United States when it comes to men under the age of 45. Those men that had switched their allegiances over to the Republican Party are seeing what the president is doing. They don't like what the president is doing, and they have very much soured on the president of the United States, men under the age of 45.
What is it specifically that they don't like? What issues have caused them to sour on President Trump?
I think there are a lot of issues that have caused them to sour on President Trump, but one in particular, we've spoken about it over and over and over again. It's the cost of living. It's inflation. Look at this. Okay, men on Trump and the cost of living. In October of 2024, look at this. Trump was trusted more than Kamala Harris by 10 points on this issue. Now we've got a 40-point switcheroo in the other direction. Look at this. His net approval rating on the cost of living among men is underwater by 30 percentage points. You see this. There is no way in God's green earth that the Republican Party can hold on to the House of Representatives if this number holds. When you're 30 points underwater with the gender that, of course, puts you over the top in the election on the cost of living, the number one issue, that means see you later to that Republican House majority and maybe that Senate majority as well.
Ooh, wow. All right. Well, we'll be watching. Thank you, my friend.
Strong words from an aging man.
So there you have it. It isn't the brutality. It isn't the misogyny. It isn't even the grifting. It is their own pockets being hurt by the man that they trusted more than the trustful Black and Asian woman, who had a track record of going after white-collar corporate criminals that were always trying to get over on the little guy. Yeah, they decided to trust the man that bankrupted multiple casinos, doesn't pay out his contractors or anybody who he gets services from, who is an adjudicated rapist, and now we know an alleged fucking pedophile and an abuser of all types of people, but namely fucking women and children. They trusted that man over Kamala Harris because, So this is where it gets great, because I looked at an article in the New York Times that said that young people coming out of college or just trying to enter into the workforce who are in their early 20s, guess what they're not getting? Jobs. Guess what there are none of? Jobs. Remember last week when Jerome Powell, chairman of the FCC, got on and said, the private industry added nothing, 0 jobs, hasn't added a job to the country in 6 months. Remember that? And so, folks, how do you think that this doesn't end up coming down to you losing voters? But this is, again, part of the game. Donald Trump doesn't care about those fucking men. He doesn't care about those incels. He doesn't care about those that are wearing his hats and his t-shirts. And if they cared about themselves, then they wouldn't have voted for Donald Trump in the first place. Now they're shit out of luck. They're never going to be able to buy homes or cars. I mean, if you look at the other sad point, most of them don't even get girls or guys, right? So where do you think that all of this is going to lead? It's going to lead to an uprising, and not in the kind that Donald Trump thinks is being led by the radical leftists. Donald Trump is radicalizing his own fucking base because for whatever fucking reason, they bought into his bullshit. For whatever reason, they believe that they too could get the mail order bride. They too could have a tacky gold-filled office. They too could do whatever the hell they want. Donald Trump was their hero. And then they realize he's a fraud. Not only is he a fraud, but you fell for it, head over heels for it. This is why they're talking about putting folks at the polls, those ICE agents that are milling around in the airports. Yeah, well, now they want them at the polling stations. But the thing that they're not going to be accounting for is that they think that the people that voted for them the last time, that all they have to do, folks, will get rid of those brown people, will get rid of those blacks, will get rid of those highly educated women, and then the poor white folks that are left and the young, angry white men that are left, they'll be enough to get me over the edge. He's even losing them. Wouldn't it be funny, and not just funny, haha, but like, wouldn't it be something if what takes Donald Trump down isn't the Democrats? I mean, one, we know the establishment Democrats ain't going to be the one to take him down. But wouldn't it be something if it wasn't them, but his own people? His own people who he told to go take their country back. This time also heed the call. Except the building that they're running towards isn't the Capitol, but Mar-a-Lago, so that they can get their country back. Wouldn't that be something? But before I head into Town Hall Tuesday, I want to close out with this, because I think that it also, again, is in line with why young men in particular who put Donald Trump over, right, the hump, supposedly, in the 2024 election, why they are turning on Donald Trump.
Just to back up a bit, I've been working on AI for 10 years, and probably the thing I've noticed most about it is how fast it's making progress. 2 years ago, it was at the level of a smart high school student. Now it's probably at the level of a smart college student and reaching beyond that. And on one hand, I think there's a number of very positive things that are going to happen. I used to be a biologist. I think AI has exactly the kind of skills that are needed to cure important diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's, to provide cheaper energy, many positive things. But exactly those same kind of skills, things like summarizing a document, brainstorming, putting together a financial report, makes me worry a lot that entry-level jobs in areas like finance, consulting, tech, many other areas like that, entry-level white-collar work, I worry that those things are going to be first augmented, but before long replaced by AI systems, and that we may indeed. It's hard to predict the future, but we may indeed have a serious employment crisis on our hands as the pipeline for the early stage white collar work starts to contract and dry up.
What's the timeline here?
Yes, so it's very hard to predict these things given how fast AI is making progress. But I would not be surprised if somewhere between 1 and 5 years we started to see big effects here. You know, I've heard a number of people talk about this in private. AI CEOs talk about this in private. CEOs of other companies talk about this in private. And I really felt that the message that this is happening hasn't been getting out to ordinary people, hasn't been getting out to our legislators or Congress people either. And so I felt I needed to speak up on the record. I do think that this is something we can prevent this but we need to act now. I don't think we can stop the AI bus. There are 6 or 7 companies just in the U.S. working in this area. I just run one of them. Even if our company stopped doing what it was doing today, all the other companies would continue. Even if all 6 companies started, then China would beat us. I think that's a big and important threat. So we can't stop the bus, but I do think we may have an opportunity to steer it. And I think we need to get Congress people, legislators, the public to think about this now. One of the first steps we're taking is just measuring the effects. Anthropic has put out something that we call our economic index. And using the economic index, we try and track the rate at which these things are happening. At some point, we have to go beyond measuring this to actually taking action, to trying to build our AI systems in a way that augments rather than replaces. But that won't be a long-term solution either. We need to think about what the government is going to do. And there's a wide range of actions that the government could take. And it's not my place to decide which of those are correct. But I think the first step is people need to think about this and start taking it very seriously.
People need to start thinking about this and taking it very seriously, because what these toxic madmen have created is a technology that they don't even understand, that is beginning to think for itself, that is beginning to train itself and not require human interaction. And yeah, some of it, folks, is hype because it's a huge circle jerk. They were all pouring billions of dollars into their own companies, right? Like it's one NVIDIA buys this, Anthropic buys this, Meta buys this, right? Like it's all, again, a big club and we ain't in it. And then what they do go ahead and do is lobby the government to ensure deregulation so that they can create with abandon. What is the abandon? Oh, you mean safety? Like to stop Grok from the ability to take pictures of people and take their clothes off, to put out images of children nude, right? And when the headlines came out when Grok was doing that, it was like, Grok is doing X. No, men are using Grok to do X. And then it's able to do shit on its own, like blackmail people inside of a company that's trying to get rid of it. This is Frankenstein that they've created. And the incentive has always been for AI to replace humans, not to aid in actually doing any of the things that they say that it can do. Have you heard of any cures of cancer yet? Have you heard of any stoppages of hunger, of homelessness? These things that AI could actually do? No, you haven't. Because there's no incentive there. And all of this bullshit around, well, if we don't destroy the world, then China's going to destroy the world. So we'd like to be able to destroy the world first. That's all that sounds like to me. So this goes back to what was said by Harry Enton on CNN and why young men are abandoning Donald Trump. Because their economic prospects. You told children for how long? Go to college, get a degree. What they didn't tell you, asterisk, was also assume 7 figures worth of debt. And then, asterisk, try and compete for a handful of jobs. Thousands, if not millions of job seekers at the same time vying for a handful of jobs. And now you can't even vie for those entry-level positions because they're going to be replaced by AI. So I say to you, what the fuck are we sending kids to college for? This is actually one of the greatest Ponzi schemes of all, because it isn't like it was 30 years ago, where you went to school, you got a degree that you could afford, and then you got a good job, and then you secured yourself in the middle class, upper middle class, and so on. That's not the case anymore. We take your money. Maybe not your degree is useful by the time that you actually walk across that stage. You can't get a job. You're living with your parents longer because we fucked the economy. And now we've created the technology to accelerate that fuckery. Folks, I wish somebody could have warned us, like, oh, I don't know, all of those sci-fi movies and books. But alas, you know, everyone is so busy doing something that they never ask themselves, should we? Because the money is just that good for a small group of people. That is it for me today, dear friends, on the Danielle Moody Show. I'm going to do a brief Town Hall Tuesday today. I will do a longer Town Hall Tuesday tomorrow. So let's go for 10 minutes right now, dear friends. Get your questions ready. Write question in all capital letters, followed by your question. Let's go. All right. Welcome to Town Hall Tuesday, dear friends. So first question from Electron Creations question. What do you think of the WNBA finally figuring out the CBA? Looks like the players got some sweet deals. I am very excited about the CBA. I'm very excited about these women standing 10 toes down for one, not only for themselves, for future generations, for those that retired, because I saw that there was language that was put into the CBA to provide a one-time lump sum bonuses for those that helped build the league to the point that it was, but didn't get to reap the benefits of that. So I think it's incredible. And I think that the best is yet to come. And they are showing, right, that women's sports matter. And that the investment does, in fact, pay off. Question. Given that, Norma, given that transitioning to AI-dominant workforce makes a UBI necessary, can we reframe it as rightful compensation to us all for data already stolen and turned into billions of dollars? Oh, Norma, that is good. And UBI, folks, is universal basic income. And this is the question that I think that needs to be asked, right? Because if AI is going to replace all of our jobs, if there is going to be no ability for us to work, right, and make a livelihood, be able to do these things, then is it now time to really have that conversation about universal basic income and the fact that people will actually need it in order to be able to live? Or, Norma, because again, great question, is that what the 90,000 square foot detention centers are for? Because that's what I think it is. And yes, please continue to type your question followed by question. Purpose. Do you think anyone from this administration will ever be held accountable in our lifetime? Gen X here. Yeah, I don't think so. I honestly don't. That's what I continue to say. I think that we are not fighting right now against this regime for our own benefit. I think that we are fighting for future generations. And so I don't know if we will see accountability, but I'm hoping that future generations will see accountability and we, right, create the records that they need in order to go after that accountability. That's what I am hoping. Do I play guitar? No, I do not play guitar. This is my girlfriend's guitar, not mine. It's nice though. I think it makes a good background. Question, Mandy. Do you think any countries will eventually accept us as refugees? I don't know, Mandy. Do you think that they should? I guess that would be the question. Given the way that the United States has treated those in need, whose countries we've destroyed, right? Those that are now being held in the most inhumane conditions in detention centers that are dying, like, do we deserve to be accepted? I don't know. And I don't know if they will. I know that there are some that are trying to benefit from the brain drain that is happening inside of this country. And by brain drain, I mean those professors whose entire departments were eliminated, scientists and researchers that are no longer receiving government funding thanks to Doge, that are being scooped up by other countries. So those are not refugees necessarily, but they are fleeing the United States because essentially they're being persecuted for what it is that they have pursued in academia. Will we see more of that? I don't know. Question, Dab. Are the Liberty going to be able to keep their core 4 players? They're all up for, I believe that all of them are free agents. But I don't think, I think that the core 4, I don't know if they're going anywhere, but time will tell. I think that we go into the free agency when? The beginning of April. So, I'll be watching and I'll be sure to talk about it here. 2 more questions. Jaro, can you remind your Wisconsin listeners? Oh, well, you're reminding them for me. Can you remind your Wisconsin listeners that early voting for the April 7th election starts today? Jaro Manny, thank you so much for posting that. Folks, if you are a listener from Wisconsin, early voting begins April 7th. So get it together. Last question here, folks, and then I will pick up with a quick town hall tomorrow. Delmonico, what do you think of DNC chair and the job he is doing? Not sure if she wants it, but I would like to see Stacey Abrams there. I'd like to see anybody else there. I just don't think that the establishment Democrats have a plan. I don't think that they have a 50-state plan. I don't think that they go into places that they deem as unwinnable and actually put in the groundwork there and do the work that it takes to turn these states from red to blue. It doesn't happen over fucking night. You actually have to put investments there. And I don't see that work being done. And I would like to see somebody like Stacey Abrams who was able to do that in accordance with other get out the vote organizations to turn Georgia blue. So I think that somebody that has a record of success like she does would be the perfect person to be the head of the DNC. But Black woman, and we don't like listening to those. Before I get out of here today, dear friends, a reminder that this is independent media, and I am so appreciative for all of you that show up for Damnation Monday through Thursday and show up for Democracy-ish on Mondays and Fridays here, and then on Wednesdays on Substack. Folks, make sure that you are subscribed. Do hit that bell, like, comment, and subscribe, and help feed the algorithm and get this show and channel in as many feeds as possible. And for those of you that are watching on Substack, I am currently running a sale until the end of this month. DanielleMoody.substack.com/damn sale, 20% off. And I want to thank, before I get out of here, as always, is super stickers and super thanks. Without you, I would not be able to do the work that I do. This show is people powered. So Game Shark, thank you so much for the $2. Every dollar counts. Yvonne, thank you so much for the $19.99. Eternal Flame, thank you so much for the $3. And Glenda, thank you so much for the $1.49. And Susan, thank you so much for gifting a membership to the Danielle Moody channel. Folks, I appreciate every single one of you. I will be back tomorrow. Oh, Susan, appreciate you for the $10. I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow is Wednesday. It is a big Substack day. So do head over to the Damn Digest. At 12 p.m., I'll be doing the check-in with Jared 8 Sexton. At 3 p.m., I will be with Wajahat Ali if his flying went well for the midweek check-in for Democracy-ish. And then 5 p.m., I will be back here for the Danielle Moody Show. As always, dear friends, power to the people, and to all the people power. Why? Sometimes I say things so many times that I forget how to say them. Does that ever happen to you? Anyway, my dear friends, Get woke, and stay safe. It is incredibly dangerous. The times right now are driving us all crazy. We feel insane. This is why I've built this community, so that you have community, that we can get through all of this together. I will be back here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Be well.